Of course, we're not alone in the world. Not only are there other objects that present themselves as to be used and come related to us, but also there are other Daseins, other consciousnesses, other human beings. It is not a problem for us to recognize that. In fact, we immediately recognize other people as consciousnesses like ourselves. He talks about Mitdasein, not only being there, but being with others. He thinks that's fundamental. We quickly recognize that we are not just beings in a world related to that world, but beings with other beings in a world. And so that with character, the character of caring not only about the world around us, but about particular consciousnesses, particular people around us, that too is fundamental to us. Mitdasein is crucial to understanding our relationship to other people and to the world around us. Now that suggests that there's a fundamentally social aspect to this. We again are born not only as not merely knowers, but pragmatically involved in the world. Our basic relation is pragmatic, but it is also social. We see ourselves as part of a group of human beings, part of a group of Daseins who are located in a world together. And that aspect of being in a world together is absolutely essential to what Dasein is. Heidegger says, the world of Dasein is a with world. Being in is being with others. If our basic relation to the world is one of caring, then our basic relation to other people is caring and being cared for. So caring and ethics, a concern for others, sympathy for others, these are fundamental to our very being. Heidegger distinguishes two forms of caring, two forms of concern for others. One form has someone who is helpless, and me, let's say, helping them. That's a legitimate form of caring, but on the other hand, it keeps the other person in a dependent position. There's something essentially hierarchical about that relationship. I am helping another person who cannot help themselves. And so he says, that's a form of caring. It's an important form of caring. There are people who can't take care of themselves. On the other hand, it isn't the ideal form of caring. What he considers authentic care is care for someone else, help for them, in a way that tries to get them into a position of independence. So think about a parent caring for a child. There's an attitude that a parent can have of caring for the child, but somehow keeping that child in a dependent position. And sometimes that continues well into what should be the child's adulthood. He says authentic care isn't like that. It is trying to nurture and raise and help someone to the point where they can care for themselves, where they are no longer dependent on your care. And so he says an ideal parent, an ideal physician, an ideal nurse, an ideal helper in general, is one who doesn't simply help in the sense of making someone else dependent on them, but trying to get that person to the point where they no longer have to be dependent on them. So ideally, this caring is a reciprocal caring, an equal sort of caring. And it's authentic care when its goal is bringing about that kind of reciprocity and equality. If the caring is one that keeps people dependent, it is inauthentic care. It is care, it is helping, it's not as if it's an evil thing, but it's not ideal. The right kind of caring, the authentic kind of caring, tries to help someone to get into a position where they are independent and no longer need that help. There are a couple of other crucial concepts to understanding the nature of Dasein. One of them is that Dasein discloses itself in moods. Heidegger is maybe the first person in Western philosophy to talk about moods in a serious way. We think of ourselves as having moods, sometimes waking up happy, sometimes waking up grumpy, sometimes being sad or homesick or happy, carefree. There are many different moods we can have. And Heidegger says there's always some kind of mood. So Dasein deals with the world frequently in a kind of modality. The mood is that modality. I see the world around me differently, depending on whether I'm happy or sad. The world of the happy person is different from the world of the sad person, in a sense. And the world of the person who is depressed is different from the world of the person who is groggy or grumpy or angry, etc. All of those moods are things that shape the way we see the world. Now, there is one particular facet of this that especially fascinates Heidegger, and that he thinks of as fundamental. It is that I recognize at some point, even though I come into this world absorbed in it and related to it in a particular place, at a particular time, I also, at some point, recognize I didn't choose this. That is to say, I've been thrown into this world. His key concept here is Orphanage. I am thrown into this world. I'm tossed into it in a way not of my own choosing, not of my own making. I was born at a given time, at a given place. I live in a particular place, in a particular possible world, given a history that I did not create, that I'm not responsible for. And so, how do I deal with this fact? I come into the world absorbed in it, but at some point I reach the recognition that actually I am something of a stranger in this world. I didn't really mean to be here. I didn't intend to be here. I'm just here. It's a remarkable circumstance of luck that I'm here at all. And so, how do I deal with that fact that the world suddenly seems strange to me? I suddenly seem tossed into it, rather than choosing to be in it. He says it poses an existential problem for all of us. Now, that recognition comes at different points. We encounter what later existentialists refer to as the absurd, and something suddenly makes us feel out of place, as if, wait a minute, what, do I even belong here? What's this all about? How did I get here? And that sense, how did I get here? There's a cool song about that. How did I get here? And what does it mean that I've been tossed into a world without choosing to be? How am I supposed to react to that? It's a crucial question, Heidegger thinks, and it calls for a certain kind of emotional response. It throws us into a kind of existential crisis. And the way we deal with it is crucially important. So let's talk about how we ought to deal with that sense of thrownness. When I think about the fact that I've been born into a particular place and time, particular family, I think, well, what does it mean exactly? I can feel my own existence as a burden if I take this too seriously and dwell on it. And so Heidegger says I have to learn how to respond to this. I may continue to feel it as a burden. I may feel estranged from the world around me. I may feel alienated. And that's one possible response. He certainly thinks it's not a good response. It's an unhappy response. But it is one way of reacting. And indeed, later in the existentialist tradition, there are people who feel as if that's inevitable. That is the basic response. Heidegger says, I can do that. I can also respond the way Albert Camus recommends responding. He talks about my revolt, my freedom, my passion. And so I can say, well, despite the fact that I've been given the starting points, I am free to choose how to go from here. And so perhaps I can say, I revolt against my thrownness. I revolt against this. I am upset that I've been tossed into a world that was not of my choosing. I am going to try to respond to it and make it into the kind of world I want it to be. That's another possible response. Heidegger, however, in the end champions a different response. He says the ideal response is for me to come to accept it and even to love it. I recognize that I have been tossed into this world in a way that I did not choose. It was not of my own making, but still I can make it my own, not by reforming it, not by transforming it through revolution or through a revolt against it, but instead by recognizing that it is my home, going back to that initial feeling of being absorbed in the world, and recognizing that even though I didn't choose it, this is mine, this is my place, this is my time, this is my family, this is my vocation. And when I look at things that way, I can start feeling as if the world is my home. Now, that means I should adopt an attitude of love, of acceptance and of love toward these things. After all, my basic relation to the world is one of caring. Alienation, if that's my response, is a kind of denial of that caring. And so it rejects something essential to Dasein. A revolt against Geworfenheit, a revolt against thrownness, is a revolt against part of my very nature as Dasein. It's revolting against the Da. And so he said, really what is proper to Dasein, what is in accordance with its essence, is accepting and recognizing and indeed loving that there being. Yes, I was born here. I am part of this world, this place, this time. And it's not a resigned, I guess I better make the best of it in a stoic fashion. Instead, it's, this is my home. This is something I need to embrace because it is essential to who I am. I am a being who is a located being. And if I don't love that location, if I don't accept and approve of that location, incorporate it into who I am bound to be alienated from myself. Dasein has to accept itself by accepting the Da as well as the Sein, by accepting its location, by accepting and loving, indeed, the place around it. Part of what's required for me to love where I am is recognizing that although, yes, I didn't choose where I start from, I didn't choose the range of possibilities in front of me. After all, there are a lot of things I can do and can be, even at my age. There are lots of choices I can make. Younger people have a much wider range of choices. He refers to that as your horizon, your field of possibilities. And it's something that does shrink typically as you grow older, though as you educate yourself, as you become more capable and more skilled in a variety of ways, then you can also expand the possibilities that are open to you. In any case, that horizon, that field of possibilities is crucial to who you are. And there are a lot of things that are not in it just because of the place and time where you were born. I cannot hope to be a Roman consul, or a medieval monk, or a starship captain. Those aren't possible for me. For deeper metaphysical reasons, I can't choose to be a cartoon character, for example, or a road runner. But there are a wide variety of things that I can do and I can be. And so if I focus not on the givenness, the strangeness of my starting point, but instead that field of possibilities and how I develop myself given this starting point as fully my own, then I can recognize that although I am in some sense tossed into the world at a place and time that were not my own choosing, nevertheless where I go from there is something I can choose. And so I recognize my own freedom at the same time that I recognize my thrownness. And that recognition of my freedom within a vast range of possibilities, that's something that gives me a kind of attitude of hope toward the future, allows me not only to accept my starting point, accept who I am, accept my home, but also to make that home mine, to actually transform my life into, well, whatever I want it to be within that realm of possibilities. Now, for some people, that is a very wide range of possibilities. For others, it's much narrower. But still, we are never locked into one path. There is always some freedom in front of us, freedom to shape ourselves into the beings we want to be. And so even if we don't choose where we start, we do, to a large extent, choose where we end up. We can choose the path, even though not all possible paths are paths that are possible for us. Still, there are many paths that are, and we get to choose which one we tread.